The DCAU gave us the best version for almost every single character that we did get, whether it was in the series Batman the Animated Series, going all the way up to Justice League Unlimited, all the different heroes, all the different villains we got to see. And two of the best examples of this are Batman. Obviously, Kevin Conroy is definitely considered to be the very best of the best when it comes to Batman. And very similarly to that, we also have Lex Luthor from the DCAU. He was a very perfect iteration, often compared to the Smallville version of Lex Luthor, in competition for the very best Lex Luthor of all time. And I feel like one of the many reasons why these two iterations of these two characters are so iconic in the DCAU is because they prioritize showing the strengths of each of these characters, but also showing their weaknesses. We do know how smart Lex Luthor is, and we also know how smart and strategic Batman's mind operates, and they highlight that time and time again throughout the DCAU, giving us a myriad of different examples of this. However, Lex Luthor might not be as smart as we all thought, and Batman may have been smarter than any of us could have expected. And that's why today we're talking Batman is smarter than Lex Luthor in the DCAU. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright. So right off the bat, I know that definitely sounds clickbaity, but let me get right to the point and start out with saying I am not here to say that Lex Luthor has a low IQ. I am not here to say that Batman has a higher IQ than Lex Luthor. No, rather I'm saying although these two characters are two of the smartest in the entire DCAU, the reason there's such a drastic difference in their overall intelligence is not the level of intelligence they have, but rather how they choose to use that intelligence. And I truly believe that highlights why Batman in the DCAU ultimately is smarter than Lex Luthor. We are shown a ton of different examples to support this statement throughout the DCAU, from Superman the Animated Series all the way to Justice League Unlimited. So going to one of the first instances of this is in Justice League. And in Justice League, when it comes to the subject of Kryptonite, you see, when Lex Luthor discovers that something can kill the Man of Steel, someone he has deemed his arch rival, someone he must destroy at all costs, Lex Luthor devises a myriad of different plans to use Kryptonite to kill Superman, and even going so far as to hold a piece of Kryptonite on his person at all times. However, this later is revealed to be a huge mistake, and it's revealed in an episode of Justice League where we find out that Kryptonite does have a negative effect on humans, and that negative effect is that over time it causes cancer, and that cancer ends up being terminal. And while you could say, how would Lex Luthor be able to surmise this? Kryptonite was something that was only supposed to hurt Superman, and to a degree you're right, and Lex Luthor even agrees with this. He literally points this out to the Doctor when he is told in this episode. However, I feel like this highlights the biggest difference between Batman and Lex Luthor's usages of their intelligence. You see, this isn't the first moment that we realized Kryptonite had a negative effect on human beings. No, we actually learned this all the way back in Superman the Animated Series. And we learn this when Batman discovers Kryptonite was stolen. He does not know what Kryptonite is. All he knows is that a statue was stolen and it was made of some unknown material. And then it is later discovered by him that that unknown material is Kryptonite. However, before he utilizes this in any capacity, before he starts carrying it on his person, he does thorough research, not just on who it could affect, but also the effects it could have on everyone, more specifically on himself. So because of this, he devises a way to keep Kryptonite on his person without having the negative effects of the radiation. And we see this confirmed later on in another episode of Justice League where Batman pulls Kryptonite out of his utility belt. And before anyone says, oh, Batman grabbed it from the Batcave, he doesn't always have it on him. Yes, he absolutely does, because there's literally a line in there after Batman takes down Amazo with the piece of Kryptonite about Batman having Kryptonite on him at all times. There is a compartment in his utility belt that is lined with lead, and it's lined with lead because Batman knows that protects against kryptonite, the negative effects that he does not want himself to be at the mercy of. So this is a clear instance of Lex Luthor being very narrow-minded, being very short-sighted, and only worrying about taking out his enemy. He's not worried about what the effects could be on himself or the people around him. All he thinks is, this can kill Superman, so I will have it on me at all times, never considering the bigger picture. And that gets into why Lex Luthor ultimately is stupid in the DCAU. Yes, from an IQ standpoint, he is intelligent. I already went over that. He is above a 12th level intellect. This was confirmed in the finale of Justice League Unlimited. He was able to obtain the anti-life equation, which needs above a 12th level intellect in order to get the anti-life equation. So we know from an IQ standpoint, Lex Luthor is incredibly smart. Even in the Injustice episodes that I am talking about here, Lex Luthor is incredibly smart. He is able to hack into the Ultra Humanites TV from the cell next door using absolutely nothing but what is literally there. He makes a bomb out of that same material as well to be used later on. So I'm not saying that Lex Luthor is not inherently smart. I'm just saying by comparison to Batman and how the two use their superior IQ definitely makes it seem like Lex Luthor just is not the sharpest tool in the shed, at least sometimes. And a lot of that has to do with his hubris. Another example of this is when Lex Luthor has Superman at his mercy. Superman is defeated. Lex Luthor is holding Kryptonite over Superman. And in this moment, Superman decides to ask Lex how Lex Luthor managed to accomplish all these illegal activities. And Lex Luthor, in this moment, instead of finishing off Superman, instead of prioritizing taking down your greatest enemy, he decides to showboat. He decides to prop himself up so much that he shares every intimate detail to the point where he is literally naming all of his accomplices, how those people helped him, and where those people are associated with. So now, the Justice League has all the information they need. And in this moment, it is revealed that Superman was actually Martian Manhunter in disguise. Batman and Green Lantern show up. Everything was being recorded, a plan likely deduced by Batman. I'm saying this because all of the recording technology was very likely Batman's, and seeing as how Batman is involved in apprehending Lex Luthor in this moment, it does stand to reason that Batman had a very large hand in coming up with this strategy, and he knew it would work. He knows Lex Luthor's mind by this point. This is shown throughout this entire episode, how well Batman truly knows the mind of Lex Luthor. And anytime Lex Luthor believes he has the upper hand, he is the most vulnerable because he does not ever consider a scenario in which he can lose. In the episode where Lex Luthor does gather a bunch of supervillains to take on the Justice League, we have multiple other instances that further prove this point. And one of these are in their first battle, Justice League versus the Injustice League. Lex Luthor is standing above everyone, watching everything unfold. And then Batman runs up the stairs and attacks Lex Luthor. In this moment, he disarms Lex Luthor and is holding them there and does nothing. Lex Luthor then manages to headbutt Batman, take him down, and pull his gun on him. Now, in this moment, Lex Luthor is just happy he overpowered Batman. He took Batman down. However, he doesn't read into the situation. Once again, all he is focused on is his victory. All he is focused on is the fact that he just took down Batman. He now has Batman at gunpoint. And not only that, at this point, the Injustice League is winning. Superman is being defeated in his current battle. So because of all of this, Lex does not have the presence of mind to think of anything other than this moment right here. Every single positive thing that has happened, and it is happening because Lex Luthor is smarter than everyone, right? Well, no. You see, Batman actually let that happen. Batman let himself be taken down. Now, no, I'm not saying he intentionally got bit by Copperhead. That was not by design. However, it also was not by design by Lex. So I'm not giving Lex Luthor any plans for that. That was definitely just a point for Copperhead. However, even putting that aside, after Batman does recuperate, he goes and tracks down Lex Luthor and the rest of the entire Injustice League. But how does he do this? Well, it's actually pointed out when the Joker arrives and smartly tells Lex that Lex Luthor needs the Joker. And the reason he needs the Joker is because he knows the Batman. He knows how the Bat thinks. And it's at this moment that we see the Joker reach onto Lex's shoulder under his collar and take something off. And when it zooms in closer, we see this something was a tracking device. In that moment earlier, when Batman did grab Lex Luthor, he was not attempting to subdue him. He was attempting to put a tracker on him so that he could find them at a later time. Yes, it would have been good to stop all of them in that moment. However, he definitely surmised that it probably wouldn't happen in their very first battle. He is not going to underestimate Lex Luthor, which also goes into why Lex Luthor constantly gets outdone by Batman, because Batman doesn't underestimate people. That's part of his whole thing, especially in the DCAU, whereas Lex Luthor time and time again definitely underestimates his enemies. This is a clear-cut example of that. He was not expecting Batman to have put a tracker on him. All he was concerned with was the fact that he managed to take down Batman, and Superman and the rest of the league were on their heels. But because of this, Batman was able to arrive, and he would have presumably been able to learn all about all of their plans. However, when he does this, the Joker knocks him out, and they are able to capture him. Again, thanks to the Joker. If not for the Joker, as crazy as it seems, Lex Luthor probably would have been screwed. Even more screwed than he ends up being later in the episode. But that also goes into why Lex Luthor ultimately is stupid in the DCAU. But moving on, after Batman is knocked out, they do decide to restrain him. They are titanium binding, so Batman cannot move. There's also a shield above him, so the Martian cannot penetrate through the building and make mental contact with Batman. So to Lex Luthor, all of his bases are covered. And in this moment, the Joker tells Lex, don't wait, do it now. You need to kill him or you will regret it. Trust me. And this is where Lex Luthor once again reiterates how inescapable the situation is, how impossible it would be for Batman to escape. Downplaying Batman's abilities in this moment, but also hyping up Lex Luthor's own intellect. He is saying, there is no way this person could outsmart me. There's no way he could get through these titanium bindings. I made sure they were titanium. I made sure they were impenetrable. And I made sure that this shield could not be penetrated by Martian Manhunter. We have all of our bases covered. However, the Joker does turn out being right. Batman surmises that Lex Luthor has a pretty crazy plan in mind. And he is able to find out that that crazy plan is planting a bomb on the Watchtower. This is thanks to the Joker revealing this to Batman, and in this moment, Batman knows he needs to do something. So what does he do? Well, he starts to create tension between all the villains, making Ultra Humanite and Grundy fight, using Cheetah as a scapegoat, manipulating her on an emotional level, because he knows Lex Luthor is watching. So when Lex Luthor runs back the tape as to why the bomb failed, who ultimately revealed it to the Justice League, he is going to assume it is Cheetah, because Cheetah is seen on camera getting intimate with Batman. They literally kiss on camera. And it is revealed later when Lex Luthor reruns the tapes and finds that. However, Batman is extremely smart because he decides to do this before he makes the deal with Ultra Humanite. And he knows that Lex Luthor is so short-sighted. As soon as he sees the betrayal from Cheetah, he will not go any further. He will not look beyond that for further information for other people who could be incriminated. If he had, he would have seen a discussion between Ultra Humanite and Batman. Now, was there sound on any of that video? Nothing we saw shows us that there was sound. However, you could argue hypothetically there could have been sound. So if Lex Luthor did review the entire tapes, he would have also been able to see and hear the conversation between Batman and Ultra Humanite, which ultimately led to Ultra Humanite betraying Lex and the rest of the Injustice League simply to be paid more money. And Ultra Humanite was instrumental in stopping Lex Luthor in the end. But this also goes into why Lex Luthor ultimately fails almost every time in the DCAU. His overconfidence. He does not believe he can lose. When planting that bomb, he is very confident he is going to succeed. And the only reason they didn't succeed was because Cheetah betrayed them. However, it goes much deeper than that, because if he had analyzed any of his so-called allies, he would have known all they are interested in is money. nothing else. They don't care about anything. They don't care about your vision. They don't care about helping you. They do not like you on a personal level. In fact, they have made it apparent that they dislike you to a very high degree. So it would be very easy for someone else to turn the tide and make at least some of them switch sides. And this is what Batman does. And the entire time Batman is captured, he essentially is just rage baiting every single person in the Injustice League to try to get them off of their game. That includes Lex Luthor, and it does work. Lex is definitely frazzled through most of this episode. And then by the end of the episode, we are able to see Batman is able to pretty easily get out of those bindings, and he is able to disrupt that field that was stopping Martian Manhunter from locating him. So the League arrives and they are victorious. Ultra Humanite, as I mentioned before, plays a major role in that, helping to take down Lex, all because of a deal he made with Batman. But this goes into Lex Luthor's hubris, his overestimating in his own abilities, and his constant underestimating of all of his enemies. He always views them as below them, so they obviously can't get the upper hand over him, right? Well, no, that's wrong. Another example of this is actually in the Cadmus arc in Justice League Unlimited, when Lex Luthor decides to take over the Watchtower and frames the Justice League for firing upon Cadmus. Yes, it seems like a great plan in theory. However, when Batman does make it apparent that the Justice League has no reason to do this, that the Justice League had Cadmus under surveillance, so they knew no one was there anyway, and it wouldn't make sense for them to fire a warning shot. He also points out to Amanda Waller that only 3 people are smart enough to take over the Watchtower. 2 of those people were on the Watchtower, leaving everyone to assume the other person was Lex Luthor, and he was correct. And Amanda Waller also knows this to be correct. She finds this out very shortly after this conversation with Batman, and after she finds this out, she finds out way more about what Lex has been up to. And the reason she's able to find this out, Lex Luthor barely covered his tracks. He was trying to get all of this technology and all of these blueprints from the Amazo project that Ivo was part of, and this was all in order to give himself a super powered body. And we even see when he ends up getting caught at the end by Waller that he is so overconfident in his intelligence that he has thought of every variable and he couldn't possibly fail. However, Amanda Waller does end up stopping him. She has this weapon, it disintegrates the entire android body. Then it is revealed that Brainiac was just lying dormant. So I guess you could put part of this plan on the shoulders of Brainiac, and Lex's short-sightedness is partially contributed to Brainiac only wanting to be reborn again. However, even still, I feel like Lex gets a little bit of the blame for having such a narrow vision when it comes to this subject matter in particular. Anytime he is about to win, he focuses on only that. He doesn't focus on the negatives that could happen or the different ways in which he could ultimately fail. And that does lead to why he fails time and time again. This is actually shown in the very next episode where Flash manages to defeat Lex Luthor when he is literally a god. He merged with Brainiac. And yes, I know the Flash has godlike abilities. However, this version of Flash is definitely one of the slowest, and he was only able to defeat Lex Luthor when fully tapping into the Speed Force, which very nearly killed him. However, even that, Lex Luthor could have just eviscerated all of the Justice League members. Instead, Lex Luthor wanted to do it his own way. He created evil versions of each of the League members to battle against themselves. And once all of them got defeated later on by Lex Luthor, he decided to take out a shotgun to try to kill the Flash. Again, a very short-sighted way to try to take out this enemy. You have godlike power, use it. However, this was Lex Luthor's hubris working right in front of our eyes, and it is shown time and time again. Whereas Batman only has this shown once, and that is in his final battle with the Joker, and that is why he ultimately loses the battle. Yes, the Joker dies, but the Batman does still lose the battle, and it is because he, for the first time, underestimates the Joker, and his only goal is to hurt the Joker as much as possible, and he becomes overconfident in his own abilities, and that is the defining characteristic for Lex Luthor in the DCAU. And it is for all of those reasons that I truly believe Batman is smarter than Lex Luthor in the DCAU in practice, not from an IQ point stance. But I'm interested to hear what all of you guys think. Do you agree with my take on this, or do you think I'm way off and Lex Luthor is still way superior to Batman? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.